This is Will Sanchez. Thank you for tuning in. My special guest today is Simran Jeet Singh. He is a professor of religion at Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas. Last year, during this New York City Marathon, Simran was running it and approached a volunteer for water.
A woman who refused to serve me water at the volunteer station, and she called me a dirty Muslim.
Because of the speed and immediacy of social media, New York roadrunners, before Simran finished the New York City Marathon, knew the organization and many others had his back. We're going to cover that and much, much more. I'm honored to have Professor Singh as a guest.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. You know, before we go into that story, that New York City story of the marathon, let's introduce you to our audience. Tell us where you were born, something about your growing up years in San Antonio, Texas. Go Spurs!
Go Spurs, yeah. I grew up in San Antonio. My parents were immigrants from Punjab, which is in modern-day India. They came in the 70s. I was born in the early 80s. My three brothers were all within 6 years of each other in age. And so we grew up playing sports together. Basketball, soccer, football, everything was, our backyard. So my childhood was largely defined by athleticism. Sports were very important to us growing up. School we would get through so that we could play. Grades we would make the grades in order to be able to play on the soccer team and the basketball team.
So was running part of that?
My running story is similar to a lot of people's. I didn't enjoy distance running when I was younger. I joined the cross-country team in high school as a way to supplement my soccer playing. So I ran quite a bit, but I didn't. I did it in order to be on the field as opposed to the running. So it was
cross training for you.
Yeah, that's right. It was the running was the cross training.
You went on to high school. To college, I should say.
That's right. I went to college also in San Antonio, Texas, and then I didn't run there at all. Actually, I continued playing sports, but no running. The distance running really picked up when I moved to graduate school in Boston.
Okay.
And Boston has a few races.
Oh yes. So you went to Trinity University?
That's right. Yeah, that's where I did my undergraduate work.
Okay. As well. And what was your majors?
I did English literature, and religion were my two majors.
Religion. Okay, because you're now a professor of religion.
That's right.
But what attracted you to religion?
I would say when I was in high school and college, it was a period during which the country was thinking a lot about religion and politics. My experience as someone who wears a turban and has facial hair and brown skin, I experienced quite a bit of discrimination, especially after 9/11. 9/11 happened when I was in high school. And so very soon afterwards, I entered into college and was still dealing with backlash, discrimination, all of these issues. And so for me, understanding where these issues were coming from would really help me address them.
You're saying 9/11 was the emphasis to learn more about religion, all kinds of religion.
That's right. After 9/11, there was intense backlash around the country against anyone who looked Muslim. And, I'm not Muslim personally, but people see me and they think I am because I fit the stereotype.
Okay.
And so for me, experiencing what it felt like to be perceived as a Muslim made me think a lot, not just about my own identity, but about what it must be like for people in different groups.
Okay.
San Antonio's a majority of San Antonio is Hispanic. Similar ethnic stereotypes there: brown skin, facial hair. People who were Latino were often confused as Muslim and attacked in So it's a very interesting thing that happens with race and religion.
Very different from New York City, I must say. So your religion is Sikh?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
What is that religion?
Sure. It's the world's fifth largest religion, about 30 million followers worldwide. The interesting thing about it is that people in the U.S. tend to know very little about religion generally, but particularly about the Sikh religion. So growing up, people just had no idea who I was or what I was about. And if they ask me, I would sort of share our basic values, which are love, compassion, service, and justice. Those are the things we strive for in our lives. One of the sort of, I think, most compelling aspects of our tradition that figures into running is we believe that every Sikh ought to be a saint soldier, somebody who is focused on spiritual cultivation, but also physically strong as well. And that means physically strong in body, but also in service and social contribution.
That's interesting. I mean, that sounds like a great religion. How could I join? Because the little bit I read to prepare for today, that you guys don't, I mean, the secret doesn't necessarily go out and try to convert anybody. This is what you are, and you don't try to convert anyone. But what if somebody wants, loves that idea, especially the young people, millennials? They're always looking for something,
Right.
and they see someone as charismatic as you. I'm sure they must have approached you and said, "I'd like to become more like you." How do you respond to that?
Well, I would say generally in our tradition, the idea is that one need not be Sikh in order to attain God. The goal in our tradition is to be in love, to find love within this life, to be fully compassionate. And so one does not have to be a Sikh to do that. One could be a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew or a Hindu. And so we don't have this belief that people have to follow our path in order to do so. So conversion has never been a part of our tradition. If people are interested in learning more and joining, they're welcome to. And there's plenty of good information out there. If people feel inspired by the Sikh tradition, what they're really inspired by is this concept of all-encompassing love, living a life of love, and that's the goal.
I was reading a little bit about the turban, and I saw that all different colors, bright orange, yellow, and there's significance to the colors.
The turban generally in South Asian culture has signified royalty. And so it used to be that only the elite in society could wear a turban. And what our prophet said was that we believe that every human is divine, every human is royal. And so we want to empower everyone to have this unique identity. You stand out in a crowd, and you also embrace this insignia of royalty. And so that's the idea behind the turban. In terms of styles, colors, you get all sorts. Usually people try and match what they're wearing. I'm not fashionable enough to do that. And so, I tend to stick with the browns and grays and blacks.
Oh, okay. That's
Simple enough. Yeah, the other day I saw my cousin wearing a polka dot shirt with a perfectly matching polka dotted turban. And he pulled it off, but it's too much for me.
Yes, some people got style. I can see that. Oh, cool. So when you're buying your running shoes, you make sure it matches your turban.
Exactly. I have smaller turbans that I wear when I run, and usually those are more colorful because the running gear tends to be more colorful as well. And so.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, so there are turbans specifically made for running? You go to a runningturban.com or something?
Not yet. I'm hoping that one day soon there will be dry fit turbans. That's not there yet.
Just recently, the oldest marathoner in the world just retired, and he happened to be Sikh. And his last run was like a 10-miler at age 101.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's incredible. In fact, he was the one who turned me on to distance running when I was in graduate school in Boston. I started running on my own. I had just moved to a new place, didn't have that many friends, and the culture there for running is great. And after learning about this gentleman, Jeet Singh, and that he had completed a marathon at the age of 100, I realized that I didn't have any excuses anymore, that if he could finish a marathon at 100, then I should probably try and do one at 25. And so that's actually when I signed up for my first run here in New York City. For
the New York City Marathon?
That's right. That was my first. I joined a team in training, the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. So that was my very first running group. They helped me sort of get situated and comfortable.
So it must have been Michael Conlon.
Michael. Yeah, that's right. It was Michael. Yeah.
What a small world.
Oh,
he was
incredible.
one of my first coaches. You get to meet all sorts of runners running for somebody was recovering from leukemia.
That's right. It was very personally meaningful for me, too, because I was running in honor of some very close friends of mine who were dealing with cancer issues.
I was reading that empathy is very important. In fact, I think you teach, but you meet with your students and talk about it. So how does empathy play a role in your life?
I'd say that generally as a minority, as someone who has experienced all sorts of discrimination growing up, empathy has been it's a very important tool for people like me to maintain a positive spirit in the face of discrimination. Otherwise, without empathy, if I experience discrimination in my world, I'll just turn around and be angry, right? It's not fair, and therefore I have the right to respond angrily or, you know, in a violent way. What empathy allows me to do is that when people hurl racist remarks at me or threats of some sort, it allows me to take a moment and try and understand where they're coming from. And if I can do that, then I can engage with them in a way that might help make progress for them, for myself, and for our society. But without empathy, there's no real conversation.
Recently in the news, I'm sure you heard about this. This runner did a Miami half marathon. He cut the course. They said it's an out and back. So she went out, but didn't finish it. Turned around, denying the legitimate person a spot. When she was confronted by it, because the timer knew it, he did cut the course. The race director, soft heart, believed her. She said, I did it. I did the course. Believe me. He said, okay, I believe you. She didn't do the course. She apologized. And the hatred that this woman is now facing is just unbelievable. And it's not the first time. There have been cheaters for whatever reason. She won't be the last. There will be another runner that will be exposed for cheating. But this one resonates because of the way society is, no, this country is, that she's getting from both sides, from men and women. Knowing that you were coming, I was thinking, wow, this is a millennial, a young person, only 23, 24 years old, Harvard educated like you are. If she were to come to you and say, Professor Singh, I need to turn around my life. Something went wrong. I did something wrong. What advice would you give this young person?
It's very hard. I think there are some things that one can do in situations like this. Like, you know, we all make mistakes, and when we make them, we own them. And I think that's helpful. People respect that. So I think that's clearly number one, and we've seen her come forward with an apology, and so I think that's important. Other challenges come with this, some of which we can address and some of which we can't really control, and this is a lesson I've learned in my own life. So one of the things that she can't control on her own is that our society is becoming so divided in this political context, especially in the sort of Trump era. And sexism, misogyny, and racism have sort of emerged to the surface in a way that I haven't seen in my lifetime. The types of remarks that I get on the street and the types of threats I get regularly I have not experienced, you know, even after 9/11. And so I think it's important for her to recognize that she's an Asian American woman, that she is increasingly a target for people who are feeling emboldened by bigotry right now. And so I think some of it she has to recognize is not something she should be taking personally, right? It's not about her, it's about her identity as an Asian American woman. I think that's very important. In terms of what she can do, what she can try to do proactively, what I would really say is, in moments like this where people are being dehumanized, the only solution we have before us is to try and humanize ourselves. And I think it's a sad state of affairs when we sit here and say we have to recognize one another's humanity, right? That we should be better than that. But unfortunately, right now, we're not as a society. And so whatever she can do to allow people to see her as a human and respect her basic human dignity. For me, what I see as effective is putting yourself out there and telling your stories, right? This is sort of where we are today, and I was open about the fact that I got, you know, verbal abuse at the New York City Marathon this year, and I've been open about it, you know, whenever I experience it. But it's because telling those stories allows people to then empathize with me, right, without hearing her story. Not just her running story, but her life story. people have that ability to sort of to anonymize her and then say, well, she's not really a person, right? The internet allows us to do that. So what I would advise her, and this is a tough thing to, not everybody can do this, but if she's willing, if she's able to just put herself out there, it'll come with a lot more vulnerability. It'll come with a lot more attacks. She's been threatened with rape. People have told her she should commit suicide, really, really nasty stuff. And I find it ridiculous because it's not a criminal activity, right? We don't punish murderers in this country in the same way that people want to punish her.
She's being more punished than people that committed real crimes.
That's right.
So it's a tough situation. So I hope she hears you and does think about it. I'm sure she is.
Yeah.
But let's get back to your situation. Actually, you've run the New York City Marathon 4 or 5 times.
That's right.
But this last one, the 2016, tell us about that marathon.
Let's see, this was my 5th New York City Marathon. I was running independently. I qualified through the 9+1 through New York Roadrunners. And let's see, in terms of, I receive abuse from time to time, right? Not always, but from time to time. When I'm running alone in Central Park, that's my usual running spot. Sometimes in races, a few times during the marathon in the past, but this year was the worst. And it fits right into the pattern of hate incidents that swept the country over the last year. What happened in that context? I was running around mile 10, I reached for water, a woman pulled it back and called me a dirty Muslim. Honestly, I didn't even process it. I grabbed the next water, and it took me a little while to realize, did that really just happen? Yeah. And then a few more times throughout the race, I heard people yell disparaging remarks, racial slurs.
How did the other runners around you react to this?
I didn't hear anybody say anything in response. There was only one time I heard somebody, when I was around mile 20, somebody yelled, "Viva Taliban," and then everybody started laughing. By mile 20, I was definitely too tired to even think about it. I was dying at that point. I was hitting the wall, and so I didn't even want to deal with it.
Okay, but Roadrunners, apparently you must have tweeted, or somebody tweeted that something happened, because the story I read through Jonathan Kane's posting that they reached out to you and let you know that they had your back.
That's right. I have made this commitment to myself over the last 2 years that anytime I receive any sort of racial abuse, I make it public. And I don't do that to get attention for myself, but really I found that this is the only way that people who don't experience what I experience can really know what it's like. And so I actually pulled out my phone during the marathon each time something happened. And by the time I finished, I didn't check my phone actually for probably an hour after the race. I was recovering. But then I opened up my Twitter and saw that I had a message and I had a voicemail from NYR as well, offering support, asking me if I could get more details. I gave them a call back. One of the things that I've learned in my experience is that for every one hateful remark I receive hundreds of positive in response, right? And people saying, this is not what people really think about you. And that's really encouraging. I've gotten into the bad habits of, the podcasts and the music while running. I'm a solo runner.
Like everything else, it's a balance. Sometimes you need that solo, that me time.
Right.
And sometimes you get other benefits for running with a group. So in case you don't know, you're welcome at every running club in New York City.
Thank you.
Bar
Thank you very
none.
much.
I can say that with complete confidence.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
Okay.
I appreciate that.
In fact, I think you started your own, some years ago, your own running club, right? Tell us about that.
We started a running club that focused primarily on Sikh Americans. And one of the reasons, there were a number of reasons. One of the reasons was as I go to these races, I would never see anybody who looked like me. And the fact of the matter is that we say that running is for everybody, but it is a sport of privilege that generally, if you go to races, especially outside of New York City, the socioeconomic class is high. The races are expensive. Training costs a lot of money, a lot of time, and not everybody can afford it. And so I really wanted to think about how do I get my own community into fitness, share something that I love with them. And for me personally, I've always seen running as a way to shatter people's stereotypes. So by just being out there and running in Central Park, hundreds of people see me out there and doing something that they wouldn't expect someone like me to be doing. And so it really challenges them, I think.
Interesting. I love one of the pictures, you're jumping up in the air. It's a very athletic pose. And all runners, you like to jump for some reason, jumping up in the air, usually in their running clothes, but you were wearing a suit.
Yeah, that's right, out on Wall Street.
One of the stories you tell, I thought it was funny, but maybe it wasn't funny to you. You were sitting or standing by your car waiting for your wife and family to come, and some couple rushes up and mistook you to be an Uber driver. Tell us that story.
It is funny, and there's racism built into that, and so it's based on a stereotype. But it's better than the negative, hateful stereotypes that we usually experience. So I welcome the humor in that sort of story. But yeah, I was outside my apartment waiting for my wife and daughter. My daughter had just been born, maybe she was 3 months or so at the time. We live on the Upper East Side, so I had pulled up the car. My wife was bringing down the baby, and a couple got in from our building, and so I recognized them, and I just said hi and can I help you, and they didn't recognize me, so I said, can I help you? And
you were wearing a different turban?
maybe I was wearing a different turban. Yeah.
For me, when women change their hair, sometimes I can't recognize
That's
them.
right. Yeah.
I go,
Yeah.
what?
That's right. Oh, I'm not your driver. And they said, oh, this isn't Uber, and I said, oh, no, it's not. And they sort of looked at each other sheepishly. I saw them through my mirror, and I was kind of laughing. I thought it was funny. And then the woman just sort of leans forward and she goes, well, can you take us anyway? We'll pay you extra. And I was like, extra what? So if my wife and daughter hadn't been there, I might have asked how much she would pay me, because
who knows?
Why not? I think there is a stereotype of what a taxi driver in the city looks like. Mm-hmm. Many of the Sikh immigrants here in New York City are taxi drivers, and so if you watch movies that Hollywood plays on these stereotypes.
Our taxi drivers are a rich mixture of immigrants. Yeah, it's all types.
That's right. Yeah.
A few women too. Yeah.
Yeah, and now with sort of the development of ride sharing, Lyft and Uber and the sort, you drive a regular car and people can't tell if it's a ride or not.
You gotta have that either a color or a placard. Usually have a placard by the side window.
That's right. Yeah.
Any other stories that you can share with us?
This past marathon, there were 4 incidents where people yelled negative comments at me. Conversely,
just the fact of being public about it has made me feel empowered, and that's part of the story for me. How do we make our communities feel empowered, like they can actually own their experiences instead of having to be defined by them?
I was also tweeting while running about all the love I was getting. So people would see me and say, look, there goes Singh. Singh is sort of a standard last name for Sikhs. So they'd see me and they'd go, oh, Mr. Singh, there goes, and then people would start cheering. It happens especially in Brooklyn, that people just get very excited, like look at the Sikh man, look at Mr. Singh. So these are sort of my standard experiences in the marathon. It's really powerful because I don't actually wear a shirt with my name on it, or I don't put it on my bib.
Oh, interesting.
So they just sort of know me by recognizing my identity.
But then, because when you're baptized, you take on the name Singh?
It was given to me at birth, but the general idea is all men have the same last name, Singh. All women have the same last name, Kaur.
Okay.
And it's supposed to signify equality. It gets rid of social status by name of by nature.
So does Singh mean warrior or something like that?
Singh literally means lion.
Lion.
That's right. Oh. That's right. Yeah.
Wow. That's a great. And you look like a lion with the mane.
Exactly. And Kaur is also both Singh and Kaur are royal last names. So again, it's this idea of uplifting people.
So you don't run for a particular running club. You have your own running club. So what kind of training do you do for yourself and for your team?
My training is very sort of haphazard, especially since the baby's been born.
Getting sleep is your training.
She's sleep training. I'm getting out when I can. What we try and do is build in for our running club. We try and build in justice issues into our runs, and what that means is we'll sort of gather, often on occasions of sort of social or political conflict, and we'll use that as moments to discuss, and then we sort of talk before while we warm up. And then as we sort of filter off into groups, people have an opportunity to just chat about whatever they're thinking about with regard to those issues. So it's turned into a really interesting sort of group that I haven't seen anywhere else, where it actually becomes about justice issues as opposed to, the sort of more small talk types of things that, you or I might discuss while running.
Yeah, I would tell people the only time men get together and talk about clothing is when they're running.
I've never thought about it that way, but yeah, that's true.
So,
I love talking about my
we,
running
we
clothes.
talk about shoes and underwear, chafing, those kind of stuff.
That's really funny. Yeah, it's true. And my wife can't get me to go shopping for regular clothes, but if it's time for running clothes, then yeah, I'm on board. That's really funny.
When my wife, before she started running, she would join me, to the beginning of the group. And for some reason, she would be behind me. And I said, come on, honey, because I was eager to go. But then I noticed when we were going out shopping, where she would take me, I couldn't keep up with her. I'm scratching my head. I don't understand the psychology of that.
True. Yeah, it is really funny.
Interesting.
Most of our team is introductory runners. They're running for the first time. And so we have them sign up for a race, and then we train towards that race.
Okay, and do you have a coach?
And I usually, myself or my sister-in-law in the past, have been sort of guiding people through it. But the races are generally short. I think we did a half marathon once, but everything else has been shorter.
Okay.
There is a race that is organized by the Sikh community out in Queens. It just started a couple of years ago by a gentleman who has now run the marathon, I think, 23 times in New York City.
Okay.
So he started a running group out there, started a race out there. It's a 5K. And so a lot of times, people who have never run before will join us so that they can train towards this 5K. It's in April.
Professor Singh, since we're wrapping up, what are some of your challenges that you have professionally coming up?
It is a very interesting time to be teaching religion. I think one of the challenges I'm finding is that Americans generally just don't know about other cultures, religions, countries, anything. And so to be introducing different religious traditions to 18-year-olds for the first time is a big challenge. It's trying to shape how they understand the world within 3 months. So that's a big challenge. And I think it's tough for them too. They're being fed all sorts of misinformation in the media, and they don't know what to do with it. And if they look online, they find the same problems.
And then athletically, do you have a goal race?
I'm signed up for the New York City this year. I'm hoping to actually train this year as opposed to last year. And I just got my running stroller just came, so I'm excited about taking the baby girl out for runs now and getting her excited about running culture.
Listen, good luck on that.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for coming in.
Of course, yeah. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.
My pleasure. Yeah, thank you.